Welcome along to the Time Seeker's Way. I'm your host, Vivian Ferguson, and this is the podcast for you if you want to discover where your time's going and how you can manage your time better. That's exactly what we're talking about in today's episode, where I'm joined by Debbie Morrow from People Solutions, Kieran Swail from the Southern Regional College, and Martin Murtagh, who is the organizer of the Growth Network. Today's episode is a little bit longer than usual, so please refer to the show notes to check out the different chapters. But I would always recommend that you listen to the episode from the very start to the very finish for the best experience. We're heading over now to Farset Labs in Belfast, where we're joined by Kieran, who's hosting today's event. Take it away, Kieran.
Kieran Swail, Tourism Innovation Specialist at Southern Regional College, and delighted to continue to support Martin and the Growth Network. And this evening, I've been invited along with a number of the Growth Network members and guests to the Farset Labs in Belfast. Well, it's my first visit to this particular building. I've been to Weaver's Court before, and it looks fabulous. Martin, well done on the location, because I got here from Newry in 45 minutes, straight off the motorway, really easy parking. So commend you and your members on the selection of this particular site. I think it's fantastic. I'm going to introduce our first two guests, Debbie Morrow and Vivian Ferguson. Debbie, tell us a little bit about you and your business.
I am the founder of Debbie Morrow People Solutions. I have got some notes with me because I have been flat to the mat this last couple of days, so let's just make sure I'm keeping on track with everything. My business is two-dimensional, so I'm an interim HR consultant, but I'm also a specialist coach. So it's two very complementary dimensions to the business. I'm really about three P's. I'm about people, I'm about passion, I'm about pain. So everything I do is people-centered. I'm very passionate about helping business owners. I'm very passionate about helping staff be the best versions of themselves. And I'm very passionate about taking away the pain from the business owners and letting them focus on the business issues.
Lovely. So Vivian, if you'd like to just introduce yourselves and tell us what you do.
Yes, so I'm Vivian Ferguson and I go by the name of Mr. Vivian, that's the name of my business. So Vivian is commonly known as a female name, and where the name kind of came from is you get a call from your insurance company going, is Vivian around? Where is he? Or where is she rather? And it's like, no, I'm Vivian, so I had to constantly correct people, so that's where Mr. Vivian came from. And it also comes from being Googleable. I don't know if that's an actual word, but
yeah, it is now. It is now.
It is now, and I just wanted something where you could stand out from the crowd, I suppose. So it kind of gets a mixed reaction from people. It's like, Mr. Vivian, I'm not sure about that name. And then actual clients of mine say, oh, I absolutely love your name. So,
well, there is that in brand recognition. You know, I was with a conference yesterday, and one of the brands that Martin would know is called Zoma. And I said, how did you come up with the name? He says, it's just people are going to remember it, and now they're one of the top marketing agencies in the end of Ireland. So yeah. Okay, so what do you do then? Tell us what you do.
Mr. Vivian saves businesses time, basically. Looking at business processes and really showing businesses the power of technology.
Debbie, you kicked off. I love the solving pain. Fantastic. Flip me. If I could get so many people to solve the pain in never mind in business and life, wouldn't we be expert life consultants solving pain? If your raison d'etre is the three P's to solve pain, okay, take that a bit further first. How do you do that? How do you solve the pain? What do you do to, first of all, identify the pain and give us some examples of how you solve it?
Okay, well, it aligns very much with you.
It does indeed, yeah.
It aligns with cumbersome processes.
Yep.
Inefficient systems.
Okay.
People, staff not being skilled. Culture very reactive, firefighting. People not feeling part of the organisation, don't understand vision, purpose, mission. They're just a wheel in a clog, expected to do a job without understanding the why. So I'm very much, everything I do with businesses and business owners is always the why. Why are you doing that? Why? It's like the 5 whys. I really dig down because I need to understand it to be able to help them. And if they can't answer that, then they don't understand it. So I challenge.
So that's interesting because you're talking about the whys and the 5 whys that maybe we can allude to. subscribe to a business innovation model by a lady called Wendy Kennedy. I've been trained up with a colleague of mine, and her mantra is "So what?" So, sorry, Ben, I'm looking at Benny here because we've had this conversation. So what? Who cares? Like, who cares? And why you? 3 simple questions, and somebody says, "Oh, fantastic, make you for." Oh, really? That's interesting. So what? So getting to the whys or the 5 whys you put is really, you're not messing about there. You're going straight in and find out what is it and why is this it?
Yeah, and also because I've had so much experience over the years, I really see people leave if they don't get what they want.
Yeah.
And if people aren't brought into the organisation and made to feel part of it, they're going to walk. And especially after COVID, there's so much choice now. People will walk. So, and that's the highest cost to an organisation.
More and more people are remote working in IT now, and Debbie made reference to what's happened in the pandemic, and like it or not, many in the room are self-employed here, and it was very, very difficult, and the world has changed since that, and it will in our lifetime. When I look back on what's happened, the cycle of demand, supply, and business, and things that have occurred, the pandemic has changed for a lot of people in many aspects of life. So in your remote work, has been a real demand from the individual, and we'll see this in IT, what people are demanding now to work remotely. But so what IT solutions then are kind of coming in more to play that wouldn't have been in 5 years' time, and nearly seen as essential now from an IT perspective to successfully remote work or to work remotely. What are the kind of things that you need to be thinking about?
Well, make sure you have a secure VPN.
Right.
And that's the number 1 thing, I think.
Would you mind if I stop you in acronyms explaining them? Just to tell me what a secure VPN means.
Virtual private network is VPN, and it basically ensures that nobody can see your data. Also, as well as that, what's really important is not connecting to the coffee shop Wi-Fi and going all the things like online banking or doing any sensitive work in a coffee shop. That's another thing to recognise.
Surely a lot of people do that.
Yeah.
Without fully realising the implications.
Yeah, people just, I suppose people that aren't technically minded, they just think, this connects me to the internet. Another thing that's come into my head here as well is BitLocker, and a lot of businesses fail to have BitLocker on their laptop. So
again, just to explain what BitLocker is.
BitLocker basically encrypts your hard drive, so if someone lifts your laptop, it's going to be useless because they'll need a special code to enter your computer.
And how do you get BitLocker onto your network, or how do you do that?
Well, another thing to be mindful of, and another
great insights here.
Another thing that businesses can fall down on is they walk into a shop and they just grab whatever they can get their hands on, and the problem with that is a lot of laptops come with something called Windows 11 Home Edition, and that's not meant for businesses at all. So you can't actually get BitLocker installed on that operating system. So
what I'm getting there is go for so as self-employed or SMEs, look for the business edition of software when you're secure, when you're buying this contract. Look for that. Okay, that's 3 really good tips. Secure VPN, look at BitLocker, and don't go for the home suite of packages. Make sure that you have that. Anything else you can think of?
Well, you definitely need to have Windows 11 Pro if you're going to use it for business use.
Okay. And Debbie, in terms of the talent acquisition, so you made really interesting reference there. You were talking about the culture and not understanding why, and now it's nearly like there's been in the last 4 to 5 years, more of a switch where the employee now has the choice. And the reliance, the employer is nearly being interviewed by the employee. Now there's nearly like a role reversal in that, and the employee says, well, I don't know if I want to work with this organisation, this company, because they're not aligned to what I want, they don't understand me. I'm guessing in terms of talent acquisition, what can SMEs in Northern Ireland do to attract, and more importantly, I suppose, and this is interesting in your discussion, to retain, to keep them, to first of all attract them, and to keep them, to hold on. What can they do?
I think the business first of all has to understand how much it costs. how much talent actually costs. It's the direct and it's the indirect costs to the business. It's not just the advertising, getting them in, it's the loss of that knowledge to fill a vacancy. It's like direct costs. I'll give an example. I always like to give examples. I was working for a business and kept their turnover rate was horrendous, and I thought, right, this needs analysis, I need to look into this. I ran a report from the system and worked out in 1 year their labour turnover was, what did I say, 67%.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or no, 69, sorry, it's in my notes, 69
Yeah,
in a 12-month period. The average in the UK is 15%.
Wow.
So then I broke it down further because it's looking at the business. The business had office-based staff, it also had production staff, it had warehouse staff. And I knew if I presented the data, I'd get a challenge back from the business on, but that's warehouse, it's really high turnover rate. So I did another analysis, and still the business was 40%. Now that's massive. They had put their heads in the sand and didn't see it. Your people, when you get people into the business, they're advertising for your business. If they're happy, they're going to tell people. If they're frustrated and if management aren't doing what management say they'll do, or developing them or growing them, they're going to walk. And those are the people that can promote your business or ruin your business, is the way I say it. So it's really about really looking at the costs and saying, actually, there's the direct cost, but then there's the indirect cost. So you've got the disruption of team dynamics, you've got the loss of the knowledge, the expertise, you've got project delays due to resource shortages, time spent getting new hires up to speed. So you need to keep those people. You need to understand them. When they come into the business, you need to make them feel part of the business, but you also want to understand where they want to go in the business. And
so I'm going to take us a bit further. Feel free to chip in on this one. So you've got to at induction, and then in terms of retention, you've got to really show them that they're loved by the
pretty much
company.
people want nurtured. It's a different. I have an intergenerational knowledge and experience, so I can see it, and I can see the challenge the norms. I can challenge the traditional because I know what the expectations are.
And I'm going to use analogies because I'm used to from sport that we did in our last conversation, in our last discussion, or coaching and drama, or things that my brother's involved in about young talent and young people, and it's a different skill set as a coach to do that nowadays than maybe with traditional. And if you take it into, you've got to actually, it is the proverbial hand on the shoulder coaching type as opposed to shouting. This doesn't work, you're not going to get that reaction. And I'm looking around the room, or certainly, somebody says, didn't get that part, and I've used this example before, tough. But people are going to say, well, I've been on the recitals. Oh, why didn't I get selected for the part? But you said, well, that's tough. That's our industry, tough. That doesn't work anymore, So they're going, I'm not coming along to next week's preparation recital. I'm not coming to it. I'm not. So that's really interesting what you're alluding to there. I'm getting a bit deeper into the how. Give us some examples, if you can, then how you can do what you can do to enable that.
Create an environment where people want to stay. Do you know what I mean? Have you ever I have gone into a business and I've got the ick on the first day and just gone, what have I done? Because what they sold me at the interview versus what I went into as an employee was complete night and day. So create that environment, and that means having those career pathways, not just having them as nice things and this is who we are and this is our USP, but actually do what you say you do. To have learning opportunities, really encourage people to want to grow, and give them meaningful work, give them work that they understand, and that they understand the full purpose of their work, but they're also given the tools to be the best version of themselves as well. So don't bring people into the business to fail and just expect them to get on with it. Understand when you bring them in, there's going to be a bit of time needed to actually involve them into the culture.
I'll throw this out and just introduce your name as you respond to the question. In terms of that, what we're alluding to here about reducing anxiety, I've written in my notes 360, which 10 years ago was a big thing, Gareth, I know it's probably in your word quite a lot when you're going into companies and they say, right, give me the full, management say I want the full 360. So, oh really, you want me to look at you as well? You go, oh, is that what 360 means? So I'm interested to find out about, I agree with a lot of the points that have been said here, but you give us some on a practical terms how you think companies can reduce anxiety, how they can really look after their employees' mental health. What do you think, guys? Yeah.
Benny McClure, mortgage broker at EM Gray. Vivian mentioned it, and it's something that really runs as a thread through all this is communication. It's so important to have regular and good communication, and that I think it takes a certain level of ownership and leadership to really take that to task, because things will kind of make their way through the business, around the business, through word of mouth, whatever anyway, but it's much better, and it would relieve, I think, a certain amount of anxiety if things were more clearly communicated and people knew where they stood and what they're responsible for and who's doing what.
So, in a practical term, Ben, are you talking about regular, like my own background, just at one stage for 2 years of working sales, and we did have the daily, then we had the weekly, and then the monthly, which every Friday at the end of the month was payday, and it used to be a little bit of a joy in London, but it was great communication. No hiding place, as anybody who works in sales will know, but it worked because you were very clear about what your targets were, how you were performing, and also other things on the what's going on, what the company's doing, and the social end of it as well came into play. So, I mean, is that the kind of thing you're alluding to, regular meetings?
I think, maybe that, or maybe just even making the culture about being open and sharing, and having lines of communication there where you're not operating in sort of different, your own kind of individual sides.
But how do you do that in a large, either private or public sector organisation? I'm using Maslow's hierarchy of needs here, anybody can see it, but how do you do it in a really big hierarchical organisation?
That's a good question. I'm thinking.
Just jump in here, everybody.
Collaboration.
Collaboration
is everything. See, if you work in your silo, you know nothing else. You don't really understand the other dynamics. See, if you collaborate and you have communication, and managers openly talk together as to how they can solve the problems, rather than just doing that demand and control, but like have that space.
I guess what I was kind of alluding to from my own experience in the last 12 years is teams. Yes, Gareth, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, no, to be first. Sorry, Gareth Harrison at Tab 365. Something you touched on earlier on, and it's something that I think is key, and it's very evident nowadays that people are working from home and businesses are trying to get them back in. But you ask business owners way back in the day what your biggest assets are, their building, their production line, all of the people are the biggest asset any business will ever have. And something from my own experience is that leaders within businesses rely on a piece of paper on what their business is currently doing. It's a report that's printed out from a lovely shiny CRM system that's spitting out these reports and that tells them this is what my business is currently doing, everything's great. It doesn't tell you how your people are achieving that. It doesn't get into the why there's problems, why there's issues, why things are being successful. I think leaders can sometimes become disjointed from the reality of what's actually happening within their own business. And one thing I always say when you talk about sort of retaining talent is engagement in the business comes from the top down. If your leaders are engaged not only in the business but in the people, spending time with the people, asking them what's going well, what's not going so well, how can I help you to remove those barriers to create excellence within the business, rather than what's going well, what's not going well, what could you just work a bit harder, please? And what tends to happen when things get really busy in a business, the first two things that get dropped is their marketing and their people development. And they're probably the two most important things to keep that business ticking over, is keeping your staff, keeping your teams engaged, keeping that development line, keeping them involved in the business and wanting the business to be a success, but also your marketing and keeping that business out there and keeping the public eye, that people know that you're still there. So when you get through that bad spell, there's a light at the end of the tunnel, there's something going to happen at the end of it. And I think sadly, the first thing that happens is, no, we'll get rid of that and we'll focus on sales.
You see, even having that conversation and understanding what the staff are doing, you're building that relationship with your staff too. They're going to feel that they can come and talk to you because you are genuinely interested, which will also help with their mental health. So if they're doing parent responsibilities, or if they have issues with their child, drugs or anything like that there, they feel like, I can actually go because I know that I'll be listened to, I know I'll be supported, and that goes a long, long way on the whole mental health challenge.
Yeah. So yeah. Sorry, just
Grace Smith, workforce wellness.
Grace.
I would agree with Gareth as well. I see that when I go into organisations, they want wellbeing programs set up. They haven't asked the staff what they want. So I'm like, what do your staff need? Yeah, it is, and that's my thing. Like, I said, don't make me do the tick box for you. So the first thing I would say to them is, let's do a survey, 3 to 5 questions max. Let's look at what are the current struggles with your staff. What do they need? Because the structure of your wellbeing program should run from what they need, not from you going, I think we'll do a bun tea party next Friday, or we'll have a bouncy castle in the office in 3 weeks' time because we think that'll be fun, or we'll do a 30-minute nutrition workshop where we say eat apples, not Mars bars. Like those are not going to move the needle. Ask your staff what they need, because if you don't ask the staff what their struggles are, it's a sticky class, so it's not going to work.
Good point. Great point.
Hi, Barry Fox, Concilio Insurance Brokers. I'm looking at this from the point of view of an employee rather than an employer.
Sure.
I work for the company I work for. Concilio has about 150 employees, something like that, and every single person in their business works from home throughout the UK. And I think a lot of businesses would find that there'd be a real danger of people getting isolated and not getting enough communication with the wider organisation. So they very deliberately put into place like a kind of overlapping Venn diagrams of different groups that everybody's in. So you'd be organised by your geography and also by your cohorts, the people who started and did the training at the same time as you. And then practice groups, which are different specialities in insurance.
Yep.
And then apart from that, there's free association within the business, and you can work with whoever you want when you want. So you're always, there's always somebody to talk to about something. You're constantly on Teams meetings, and then they have conferences twice a year and stuff like that as well. But the energy in setting up the business and the structures to make sure that people are really happy and confident and being communicated with constantly makes for very happy workers. The business constantly wins accolades for Employer of the Year within the industry and stuff like that, and I think it's because that has been designed into the structure right from the start.
Yeah, well, that's a very interesting case study, because that's what we're looking for, good examples of, particularly with predominantly 100% remote working too, which is a challenge.
And the other thing is there's no managers. Nobody's got a line manager.
Okay.
Everybody's got a coach who is a colleague who's just been in the business longer.
Yeah.
Obviously there are bosses. It's a
somebody has to be
serious, money making enterprise, but I don't have a boss who I report to and tell how many times have I done this or that.
What I was kind of alluding to earlier was that team's approach, and I think you do get there. This is my own experience coming into play here. You do get more of a buy-in and certainly longevity and loyalty to the company when you do have that team's collaborative approach to solving the problem or to organising something, and we're working together as a team on it. And I find that in the work that I do within a public sector organisation, yet I'm in a quite unique setup in a tertiary education, but it's a business support, and we very much are a team together, working in all individual specialisms, but as a collective we do that very, very effectively. Debbie, some of the ideas you were talking about and you alluded to that I want to pick up on, you started to talk about some of the ways that companies or businesses can help their employees, and you mentioned about having time for parental care, looking after your parents, or give us some other ideas.
Flexible working.
Flexible working.
Yeah. I always try to say to the managers whenever I'm out with them and I get the whole, they're doing this, they're doing that, they're doing this, and I'm going, you don't know the restore. Have you asked them to restore? You know what I mean? It's wee things like, Bennett, you got put out there, you got the 2 mortgages. It's about remembering that. It's about saying, well done, doing that personal chat and not just treating it as like, well, we expected it of you, but actually being really genuine and authentic, and like, we're really proud of you. Well done. Everybody loves to hear that. Everybody loves to feel special.
Thanks. Stop.
That goes on to something, certainly in a whole approach to your employees of regular update, of regular feedback with your whether it's a team's approach or a line manager's approach, but positive reinforcement that Kieran, you're on target, you're doing a great job. Okay, well, how do you judge my success? Well, listen, your evaluations are very, very positive. Your clients are saying you're doing a good job with them. So somebody regularly, I feel good about my job if that's good. I'm interested in all of the other tangible things that
But
you.
also genuinely, it's okay not to be okay. Not just to have it as a slogan, but to actually live it.
Yeah.
So if somebody does make a mistake, okay, it's a mistake.
Yeah.
So what have you learned from it? Not like punitive and you can't do your job and that person living in fear.
But that comes down to Garrett's point a lot there earlier, as the leaders, and I take from this role in their sleeves up.
So management development.
Yeah.
Train the managers to be managers.
That's a real skill, softer skill set as some would perceive, but so important.
It's a privilege to be a manager.
Yeah.
It is a privilege.
There's a problem with a lot of startup companies that kick off, and there's 4 or 5 guys who are doing absolutely everything in the business. They're mopping the floors, they're doing the dishes, they're doing the IT support, they're doing absolutely everything, sales, everything in the job. And the business is going to scale up and start to grow, and they bring more staff in. Sometimes the biggest mistake they can make is those 4 or 5 guys who were in at the start, you're now a leader of this team, you're now a leader of this team, you're now a leader of this team. And those guys may not actually know how to lead a team, and businesses can fail quite dramatically because the engagement with the staff, turnover starts to kick up, problems start to start to come in with the customers and stuff, and it just can get out of hand very, very quickly. When the honest conversation should have happened to say, we don't think you're leadership material, but you've been here from the start, we'll reward you in a different way, but we're going to bring somebody else in potentially to manage you and your team for the sake of the business, and it's a business decision.
And also promoting technical people into leadership roles.
Yeah.
Technically, they don't have the softer skills.
Yeah.
They have the technical and they're amazing at that there, but their skill set isn't managing teams.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's where I was going with that. Very often, who are highly intelligent and highly creative and highly technical, but actually they may not be able to manage a team.
You'll crush their creativity.
And they'll all walk out the door because of that.
Because they'll be told, here's a list of reports you've got to manage on a day-to-day basis, here's 60, 70, 80 emails you'll be getting every hour you've got to manage. You kill that creativity, which then has a negative impact on the business. Yeah.
I'm interested in any other ideas, both from Debbie here, in terms of I love the idea of flexibility, but in reality, is it okay to work a 3-day week? Is it okay to come in and say, I'm going to work Friday, Saturday and Sunday? Or are you finding that businesses are more open to that now?
I think a lot of it's the flexibility, but also the trust.
Mm.
You know what I mean? You're allowing flexibility, but you're not micromanaging and is your light on? That constant where people are living in fear, sitting by their desks and doing this here. It's letting them feel, as long as I do my paid hours in a day and I deliver the outputs, I've done a good job.
I don't know what a challenge that's like. I get what you're saying there. It comes down quite a lot to how the business measures how long it takes to do a job. So they staff their teams accordingly and correctly to keep their costs manageable. But also they understand when staff do take a break, they take a break. There's somebody who's close to me, family-wise, who works for a company here in Northern Ireland, and they have unlimited annual leave every year. They can take as much annual leave as they want every year, but they also have targets to hit, and they've got stuff that they need to do. So they're very bought into the fact that if I work hard and get this stuff done, then I can take 2 weeks off, I can take 3 weeks off, I can take 4 weeks off, and then go and get it done after. It's trying to understand how long does it take to make a widget, how long does it take to do something, and a lot of businesses they can't put their finger on, they can't tell you how long it takes to do something within their own business.
Because I work for a company that gives the unlimited annual leave in HR, and what was I asked to do? You pull over a report, tell me what leave they've taken, and like if they've taken over like the statutory, and it's like, and that's where I am, and that's why I'm doing the coaching. My job, I see, is to challenge that. Don't let.
Yes, I'm going to, I think, bring Grace in here, just if you're okay to jump into the conversation, and Grania as well, because we had an interesting conversation about where you are and work and stuff like that. Any other ideas of what companies can be thinking? I love the idea of flexible working, and I have flexible working in to a degree. I'm allowed to build up what's called time in lieu. Don't get overtime. I don't know how to use the word get overtime anymore, but time, now, that's of a real value to me. Now, I'm not going to take it in March because that's our really busy time for project end, but I will be able to take it at quieter times of the year. Now, that means a lot to me. That building up that annual leave means building up the time in lieu and saving that and taking that at a time is worth a lot. As is, we were talking about the environment, the work environment of where I work and my colleagues means a lot to me, and the trust that you're doing. So those all things. I'm going to bring in Grace. Other things that you might think this maybe could be thinking about in terms of, you know, the future.
There's quite a few organisations I know that have caring days. So if you are a carer or you're the partner of a carer, you get 2 carer days a year. There's other companies that have community volunteering days, so you're allowed 2, sometimes 3 days a year to give up of your time to go and volunteer in certain community groups. Those would kind of be the main ones. There's a company I work with that has 2 self-care days a quarter.
8 days a year.
Yeah, 8 days a year that you can take. You don't need to let anybody know that you need those days, either for mental health or something's come up. It doesn't matter, no questions asked. You're allowed those 2 days.
Are they paid those days?
Yep.
So up to 8 days a year. So there's real, back to Debbie's point, real trust there.
It's a company in construction, so they know that it's a high pressurized, high deadline company, and they reward their employees with that trust. They offer flexible working as well, but there's where they go above and beyond just offering flexible working. They give carer days and they also give self-care days.
And self-care, without being too technical, could be anything from a mental health to a wellness along that scale, anywhere.
It's up to you to decide as the employee, what do you need that for, and there's no questions asked around that.
Okay, interesting. Anybody else on those kind of, Andrea, who joined us?
Sorry, Nick, but I suppose I'm thinking self-care days, or even when I heard that idea of unlimited leave, I would be hearing that a wee bit cynically, thinking, oh, I bet you unlimited leave people take less holiday than, you know, because they don't have any sort of target. And I just wonder how that psychology could work. And then I'm even thinking of self-care days, and there's a bit of me thinking, this is all just kind of the world we're in, PC, everything very, you know, and the key people who can promote you, who can, you know, really, are they bought in? So that's the key, is there maybe someone on the board, or not even on board, I don't know, who's just kind of reluctantly throwing this out there because the days we're in now, we just have to throw this stuff out, but it's actually not going to help you to progress. So I think that's one of the challenges, is trying to get the real core people to actually buy into that can be a long-term benefit.
I always liked about we all should be skeptical and question and have that. I think what we're looking here is ideas for businesses, and what we all can be thinking about is, you know, if we want the question alluded from how can you retain your staff?
Yeah.
You know, and certainly offering flexibility, building up trust, having the opportunities to do these things. Certainly for me, my children are older now, but when they were young, sometimes I just drop everything and childminder was off. What do you do? Like, and in the days we weren't working from home, one of us has to make a choice. Childminder's off, like that's it, you know, and the children are young, like so. But having another person, it's okay. One of those 8 days. Listen, I'm taking one of those days. The childminder's gone, but I'm a 3-year-old. It's not nursery. Well, I have to be at home when I'm meant to be doing this, you know. So go ahead.
Yeah, it's just something you said, Andrew. Just go back to what Grace had talked about earlier on. One of the most frustrating things, someone who worked in one of the big banks in Ireland for 20 years, one of the most frustrating things I ever experienced as a member of staff was the fads. This is flavour of the month, this is our big drive this month to improve well-being, or this is the big drive for training and stuff, and then it disappeared very quickly because nobody kept it going. And to come back to what you were saying earlier on, Grace, about does anybody ever stop to ask the staff what they actually would like? Do they want a pizza party? And you get guys who are sitting in a boardroom again, go back to what I was saying earlier on, looking at what the business is doing, and somebody comes up with this idea, and I think that's great, and the ground, like masters of the universe, and pat themselves in the back and say, well done, we've nailed it. And they go out and deliver this fad, and then disappears very quickly, and the staff very quickly catch on to this. So when the next one comes along, they don't buy into it. And it could be the big one that actually changes the business for the better, but they don't buy into it because they don't find out in a month or 2 months' time something new and shiny will be coming along. And it is, and I get what you're saying about the annual leave thing, but that's what helps. I know the person very well who works with things. They take a lot of pride in what they do.
Yeah.
They work very, very hard for what they do, but they also take their holidays. Do you know, well, and they're actually pushed to take their holidays to make sure, say, look, you need time away from the office, and go and spend time with your family and stuff. And it was the reason why I left. One of the reasons why I left the business and back started out on my own was because I was spending so much time away from my family. It was the realization kicked in. It's like, this is not wrong.
On behalf of the Growth Network, and thanks very much for Vivian and Debbie. Great to have you as members of the community as well. We had a great chat, and it was nice for our members in the room to be able to share their input, their own experience as well. So listen, thanks very much, and look forward to, we'll have to get this down to Newry next down to Dundalk as well. So no problem. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
A huge thank you to Martin Murtagh from the Growth Network for allowing today's episode to be filmed at his event. Thank you so much, Martin. It was so valuable to me, and I'm sure it's going to be so valuable to my listeners. You can find out more information about the Growth Network in today's show notes. The Time Seeker's Way is available on the Mr. Vivian YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening.